on the first day of filming that film, he made two remarkable comments. One was to me and Emma Thompson after we'd just done a little walk and talk scene, and I thought we'd been frankly marvellous. And we went up to Ang, who was sitting at the monitor afterwards. He was looking absolutely miserable. Like that. We said, well, what do you think, Ang? What do you think? And he said, very boring. It was very crushing. And then he said to Kate Winslet, as she was leaving the set at the end of the first day, don't worry, you'll get better. But he also had, he had good notes. He said to me one day, after I'd done about 4 or 5 takes, he said, okay, now do one like bad actor. And I said, I think I've actually done that one.
The Hallmark movies are really fast. We're shooting in 15 days an entire film, so usually you have 4 months at least to do a film. So we're working in extraordinary paces, and we're getting, 6 pages a day done, 7 pages a day done. And so I think as an actor, you actually have to really be on your game, because the director, the producer, everybody is so overwhelmed with the task of getting through their day and making their day. So I'm glad that I had some acting experience coming into this. I've been very supported. I have amazing support on set. I think for me, the best advice I got was really early on with Ang Lee, who was my first director. And he was the first one to point out things like I couldn't sustain my energy more than 2 hours a day. And he realized it was because I had sung live my whole life. I didn't add those things up. He was the one that told me that. Other things, were simple, but I didn't know anything about filming when I did that movie, and so I didn't know that there were close-ups and that there were long shots, and so I was giving my all on these really long shots where it was about that big, and I was exhausted by my close-up. I was just like an emotional zombie. I had nothing left, and they had to film around me and my being able to keep up and pace my energy. Ang also gave me some really beautiful advice during a scene where I was supposed to cry, and I was so nervous and so uptight about it. I didn't know how to cry. On set, on command, around a bunch of strangers. For a girl that came from an abusive background, it's a very vulnerable, scary thing to do. And he took me aside and, he said, what you're doing is working for me and it's enough. He goes, if I wanted to make you cry, I could. He says, all I'd have to do is say something mean to you right now. And you would cry because you care about what I think and you care about pleasing me. He says, but you're smart enough to know I'd be manipulating you. And he says, I don't think you would trust another director, so I'm not gonna do it. And I was very touched by that gesture, because he was right. I would have made me an incredibly guarded person and very mistrustful. And I appreciated that he saw that and saw the humanity in me. And he still got what he needed without manipulating me in that way. And I really appreciated that. It was a very positive experience.
Well, Ang is such a philosophical director, to the point where sometimes I didn't feel smart enough to get his direction. Like Arturo, less love, more volume. And I'm like, what the hell does that mean? But it was a master class in acting for about 4 months. The most grueling process, I guess, was we did a boot camp with Navy SEALs. And me, the actor, being like, what time is brunch? No, we're not doing brunch. And that was 2 weeks. They threw us out in the woods with these guys, took away our phones, and they wanted us to respect the uniform and to really at least get a glimpse of what these people went through. But it was hard, man. I learned about the architecture of violence. I learned about putting mission and company first, for sure. But then we were shooting in Atlanta and Morocco, and it was such a quiet. Ang is all about do less, and so it was an interest. As an actor, you always feel like you have to do something, You're standing there, you can't be boring, And this camera is so clear that it's capturing sort of your thoughts. So Ang really taught me about the power of stillness. Obviously, I didn't learn it very well because I'm jittery all the time. But it was for the rest of my life, I'll take that experience with me, no matter how many people saw it or whatever.
I remember Ang Lee telling me after I opened the door and I said, oh my God, you're here, whatever, my characters. And thank God Joan Allen was standing right behind me and Kevin Kline to hear what Ang Lee said to me, because if they had not been standing behind me and I heard what Ang Lee said to me, I would have probably quit acting. Because I do this first take and he comes over and he says, not so Victoria.
What did that mean?
It means not so like I was overacting, like it was too Broadway theater acting or something.
Really?
And Joan Allen was laughed. She said, "Don't worry, he says that to us every day, you know." Because, but it was his just way of saying, just wanted me to just bring it down.
Yeah.
But I think it was what he had developed with Joan and Kevin, that was their sign. Not so Victoria.
That's
and
insane.
It just made me laugh. I thought, oh my God, he's telling me I'm overacting. And I was like, I'm just doing my mother. That's how my mother answers the door when she has a party. I'm just doing my mother.
I think because if you ever watch his film Eat, Drink, Man, Woman, you'll recognize that he comes from a society that has all sorts of parallels. How to behave, what the rules are between men and women, and within a society. And although it seemed an odd choice at the beginning, it was very quickly apparent that it was a rather brilliant one. He's very rigorous, and that was a time in English history when rigor was the rule of the day in terms of coming into a room and bowing and curtsying, and it wasn't just a question of opening doors or ladies first. I mean, there was a real sense of rules about it, and kids were trained from 5 years old in how to move, how to walk, how to sit, and we had to go through all that stuff. I mean, there was odd moments when his command of English was a little dubious, and you really had to hold your nerve. I think Emma has written in her book that after one scene he said to her, "Emma, try not to look so old." And what he meant, of course, and what she fed through that kind of English Taiwanese invisible dictionary was don't be so knowing. Hold on to your innocence a little bit more, but it's a bit punishing for a woman. And the one I got from him was, "Alan, be more subtle, do more." I think he meant do more of the subtle stuff.
Mountain was a very special movie to me. And I remember when Ang Lee offered me the film, I was still shooting Alexander with Oliver Stone. And Alexander was really a huge, complicated movie. You know, many characters, battle scenes, of course, and thrilling. I loved doing that. It was really, really great. So when I read Brokeback Mountain, just stylistically, it seemed like a great thing to do after, very simple movie in a way, basically two characters. And of course, working with Ang Lee, sounded like a really interesting thing for me. He's so into research. He really gets into learning about the story and what people behave like in a certain environment. So on Brokeback Mountain, he really got into cowboys and how they talk and what are their objects, and he really gets deeply into that. And he wanted it to be very simple because, and this made total sense to me, because I think that the camera is a language, and the characters in Brokeback Mountain are not very talkative. They're not loquacious, so they don't use a lot of words. So why use a lot of shots? So we want to be kind of like them, see the world as they do in a way. So they basically kind of stand around in very specific positions, and which Ang was into that, into seeing how cowboys stand and all this. So that's one reason, for example, that we shot 1.85. Even though in a movie with landscapes, you'd think, oh yeah, we should go widescreen. But he was more interested in the body of these characters. So we shot 1.85, which also made sense actually with the mountain, which was vertical. So that's why we chose that aspect ratio. But yes, we kept it simple. It was, if anything, we'd do a dolly shot, but mostly not. Mostly it was just on sticks and static shots. And, obviously it's a really good movie. It's a great movie, but just the way we did it felt right, felt very, appropriate to the story.
He does not let you, there's not one split second of, I don't want to say dishonesty, like I'm trying to convince someone of something that's untrue, but if there's one moment that you fall or one second of inconsistency that isn't that's maybe, you know, as an actor, you fill in blanks, you try and control things, or you try and deliver something to someone or something, because that's kind of like how you're accustomed to making people happy or satisfying a director, or when you're not 100% feeling something, or like in a moment with another, you can kind of, especially as somebody who's like done a ton of movies, you just kind of like pick up the slack in this lazy way. Absolutely impossible. Like, absolutely, like, not for 1 second, and nor will he be okay with like cutting around that. It's like, I've never felt more visible or seen, which is like, and it speaks to not just how he's photographing things, but the way he sees things, which is why he's photographing things the way he is. Like, honestly, there were times like we did, on a couple of things, we did 3 takes, and we were both like, we just went away being like shaking. And then, you know, and I was like, oh, maybe that's how Aang works. It's like lightning in a bottle, you know, whatever you get, it's authentic, it's what it is. But then we were in his bedroom and we did 35 takes of my close-up, and I was like, I'm completely messing everything up. Oh my God. I was like, obviously we're doing it 35 times. There's no way that there has to be something I'm not here right now. And I don't believe that we would have ever moved on unless all of a sudden he went, okay, I believed you. And I think, yeah, it doesn't only speak to his eye. It definitely is the camera and his eye and the combination of the two and why he's working with it and blah, blah, blah. But it was like with the least expectation and like the most encouragement and faith. It was so cool. He's like zen as hell as well, which is weird because it's not like, I usually work on nerves and stuff, like, oh, okay, we're gonna do this. And he's like, don't fake it. Like, you don't need the nerves. You need to just calm down. It's like, oh man, okay, well, I just be a little bit more like you. So yeah, it was awesome.
It's amazing to think about the fervor that surrounded Brokeback Mountain when it was released 11 years ago. Heath, Aang, and I were at the center of a storm that year, fielding the praise and controversy that came from telling a love story about 2 men. Standing here tonight, I can't help but think about Heath and how much he would have loved to witness all of this incredible change that has been affected in the LGBT community in the intervening years. He would be proud to know that he had somehow played a small part in all of it. I know that I am. And even though Brokeback was very much a movie of its moment in history, Aang made sure that it would stand the test of time. He kept it simple and quiet, with respect for the characters and their corner of the world. He knew that to tell a big story, you have to keep it small. Aang, like any master director, though there aren't many, is an extraordinary teacher. And while some auteurs lead their troops with flash and bang, working with Aang is a masterclass in silence. We don't always need to speak in order to communicate, and it's a lesson that rings in my ears often. I remember the day we shot our big love scene. When we finished the scene, both Heath and I, we got up and we looked over to see a huge smile on Aang's face. And I was surprised because although you might not know it, Aang has a really great sense of humor. He rarely smiled on set. But this was a shit-eating grin. And so naturally I walked up to Aang and I was excited to see any sort of emotion cross his face. And eagerly I asked, I was like, how was that? How was that? You liked the scene? And he just was nodding in a really awkward way. And he just said, so gay. That was the first of many times that he would say that. But what makes him so unique and so deserving of our highest honor is that Aang realizes that each film is elementally different. And instead of choosing scripts that are in his wheelhouse or bending narratives to meet his style, he meets his stories where they are, and he gives them what they need.